Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Seahawks defense dominates for a Super Bowl win.
The 11 years ago defeat has been avenged.
The Patriots can't find any rhythm in the loss.
I did not have confidence that the Patriots would be able to move the ball consistently.
And North Carolina hit a game winner over the weekend over rival Duke.
North Carolina beats Duke on Saturday night, 71-68.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Seattle Seahawks are Super Bowl 60 champions after a 29-13 win over the Patriots last night. Seattle's defense dominated, and Corbin Smith is with Nick Lee with a recap of the big game.
The Seattle Seahawks are Super Bowl champions, getting it done in emphatic fashion, 29-13 victors over the New England Patriots. The giant has been slayed. The 11 years ago defeat has been avenged. I know Mike McDonald and these guys, none of them were on that team, none of them on that coaching staff, but still avenging that loss from 11 years ago and getting the Lombardi Trophy for a second time, going to be bringing it back to the Pacific Northwest. And keeping that in mind, I want to make sure we get our shout outs in. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. If you are in Phoenix, Arizona, or you stayed up throughout the night and you are listening in from London, thank you so much to all of our 12s that tune in and make this show, Locked On Seahawks, your first listen 5 days a week. Let's talk Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. And Nick, you look at the score, 29-13. I don't think it necessarily paints a picture of how one-sided that this game was. And you and I were thinking this during the game, just in different parts of the country. I'm obviously down here in Santa Clara, and you were up in the Seattle area watching the game. But there was this sense that I had early on. Seattle was getting field goals. They weren't finishing drives, but it still felt like if just one or two big plays go their way, the Seahawks can turn this into one of those, what I call snowball games. And that's really what happened late in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter, is this game that had been kept close. 12-0 felt like 50-0 in this game, though. Seattle was able to get that snowball rolling on the defensive side of the football. They got points off of it, capitalized the complementary football this team's been so good at all year. They were able to get it done one more time, and this was a pretty dominant win, even if it wasn't the most visually appealing to watch in terms of quarterback play and everything else. It doesn't matter. A Lombardi Trophy is a Lombardi Trophy, and another just utterly dominant performance by Mike McDonald's defense to get it done.
Yeah, a friend of mine texted me saying that the Lombardi Trophy isn't, less shiny because, you gave up some points there at the end. Because after a while, it turned into, okay, can we get the first shutout in Super Bowl history? And, of course, that didn't happen. But, with the Patriots and Seahawks, it kind of turned into the old, press conference. They are who we thought they were, and both teams. And the Patriots, at least from our side of things, I'm sure Boston fans would disagree, but, most of the national media and also us here, we kind of thought maybe they were a bit of a product of their schedule, and seeing them like ranked in second in yards per play, and fourth in explosive play rates, and top 10 in EPA per play, and all this stuff on offense here. It on paper, it looked like epic offense meets epic defense. And, if you read between the lines and the kind of below the surface, we knew that the schedule of these two teams were very different. And it turned into a little bit of a fool's gold on the offensive side of things for the Patriots. And I don't mean that to say that the Seahawks didn't make them that way, because the defense for the Seahawks, I just want to say I would love to see if there is some world we could make this happen, maybe AI can advance or something where we can watch the 2025 Seahawks play against the 2013 Seahawks, because I think it would be a darn competitive matchup, especially with Dark Side versus Legion of Boom defenses, which there's an argument to be made while the scores are different. And, there's some stats that Patriots got some late stat padding things at late, but it's hard to argue that this wasn't as dominant defensively besides that. And it's crazy. They're like a couple inches of a throw here from Sam Darnold or a fingertip of Christian Gonzalez here from this being 37-7.
Yeah, this game could have been much worse than what the score ended up being. And again, I don't think that it was as close as the score ended up being. Those couple garbage drives in the fourth quarter. And there were some good throws by Drake May at that point. But just to put in perspective, aside from those two drives, just how utterly ridiculous Seattle's defense was today. 8 of the first 9 drives, New England punted. The other one, they kneeled down at the end of the first half. I mean, it was a one-sided wrecking crew. Mike McDonald came out much more aggressive blitzing than we've seen him most of the season. And that turned out to be the right call, obviously, because this is a Patriots offensive line that had given up 15 sacks in 3 playoff games. And Drake May was under duress from the outset. And Mike McDonald, being the puppeteer that he is, had Nick Emanwari blitzing, Devin Witherspoon blitzing. He was getting Derek Hall on stunts. He was doing all kinds of fun stuff out there to get that offensive line confused. They were playing slow, and then they were getting bullied with power moves and letting guys come free untouched. And Drake May had no fighting chance on a lot of those. And he made some bad throws in this game as well. There was an arm punt to Julian Love in the second half. And I wrote an article about this on Emerald City Spectrum after the game. You can check that at emeraldcityspectrum.com. But I think there's no denying when you look at what the Seahawks did from start to finish this season. And you can call it fool's gold all you want. This was the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL. They were tied for the most explosive plays in the NFL. And Seattle just basically relegated them completely a non-factor for most of this game. They had them shut down. They couldn't run the ball. When they tried to, they got blasted. May was getting pressured. He had a couple times he scampered away, but we talked about the keys to victory. If he has 1 or 2 of those runs, not a big deal. That's what Seattle did. For the most part, their pass rush lanes were on point. And then really the monsoon that came late with 3 turnovers after the 1 minute left mark in the third quarter. Seattle turned those into 10 points at 8 o'clock on the other turnover. Pass rush, guys in the back end getting it done. This really was a culmination of what we've seen from the Seahawks all year. And the special teams. New England had a good special teams unit, but Seattle just absolutely dominated in that capacity. And the punts, the kicks, you name it. Seattle was they were the better football team. And eventually that ended up being the case on the scoreboard in this game. The Patriots fought early, particularly on defense, but end of the day, the team that won the best division maybe in NFL history, they win the Super Bowl. That's not a surprise.
Not at all. And just another paint the picture of what this defense did today. I saw a stat flash up on ESPN where 40% of the Patriots' offensive plays went for 0 or negative yards. That is
almost
just
half.
An absolutely suffocating. And then you go into, I believe I saw the stat where it's the Seahawks produced a 52.8% pressure rate, which is the highest of any Super Bowl since 2018 at least, and a 12.2% sack rate, ranking 7th all-time among Super Bowls since they tracked it in 2000. So really, again, not just historically good Seahawks defense or historically good performances defensively in the Super Bowl. We're talking about just in the entire body of work, like you said, with winning the toughest division perhaps in NFL history. And if you go through like the strength of schedule, who they faced and the road they took to get here, beating 2 division rivals to make the Super Bowl, 2 not just division rivals, 12+ win teams. I would put this team against just about anyone else in recent NFL history. Honestly, maybe they don't win every one of those games. If you put the 2025 Seahawks against the past, 20 Super Bowl champions. I kind of like their chances on a lot of those games, just with how well balanced they are and just how absolutely just maniacal that defense is with Mike McDonald.
I think that's the perfect term. And they're maniacs. They're insane. The way that they do things, and these guys, they expected it. That's the thing. There's, I think that's part of the magic here. This team expected to do this. This defense expected to do this, and they didn't let the media frenzy and all the distractions that can happen this week. They embraced it. It's just another game, and they've played like that the entire way through the postseason. And
the Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care most about, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better place to follow the action than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big Six in 60. The Patriots lost their first Super Bowl since the Brady-Belichick era, and it wasn't pretty. Drake May missed some throws, and the offensive line had no answers for Seattle's rush. Nick Cattles with Locked On Patriots tells us where the Patriots stand going forward after the loss.
As we talked about this Super Bowl leading into it, the 2 weeks we had to discuss what we thought could happen, what might happen, what should happen, I said from the very beginning that I did not have confidence that the Patriots would be able to move the ball consistently against the Seahawks defense. I had said from the very beginning the Patriots would need turnovers. They would need Sam Darnold to turn the football over. They would need for maybe Kenneth Walker to fumble. They would need a short field or two to win this game, to give them the best chance. And what we saw from the Seahawks defense was even more dominant than I expected. And I thought they would be very, very good against this Patriots offense and offensive line. But let's start talking about the offensive line. They got smoked. They got embarrassed. They got humiliated. They got manhandled. The offensive line was atrocious. There's no other way to look at this. Will Campbell, right out of the gates, getting pushed back into the lap of Drake May. Jared Wilson, missing a block on a pretty important early run call on second down, just completely missing his block. He's getting pushed back into Drake May's lap. Morgan Moses, Mike Owenu getting beat on a stunt play. I mean, all of these things culminated in a truly brutal, awful night for your offensive line. There's really no other way to describe what we saw. On the fumble, Mike Owenu gets beat. Morgan Moses is trying to handle a stunt up front. Because Mike Owenu gets beat, Drake May has to kind of step up into the pocket. Morgan Moses gives up that pressure. I don't even know if he knew Drake May was where he was when he fumbled the football. Your offensive line got their tookuses handed to them. That's where it all starts. We can talk about Josh McDaniels. We'll talk about the offense. We'll talk about Drake May, but that's where it starts. Your offensive line at the very beginning of this football game was not ready, and they were not close to being good enough. And you had the trickle-down effect, because as soon as your offensive line showed itself at the beginning of this game, what happened? Drake May sped up. And we've seen this before. It happens to a lot of quarterbacks, not just Drake May, but it happens to a lot of quarterbacks. When your offensive line is as bad as this offensive line was against the pass rush early, that's going to get to a quarterback. And Drake May almost immediately starts to speed up. And because he starts to speed up, he's erratic. And he was erratic all night long. He missed 4 or 5 throws that you have to have. Against this Seahawks defense, we talked about it. You're going to have tight windows. You're going to have not a ton of opportunities. And when you have an opportunity, you've got to make the throw. You've got to make the play. You cannot miss Hunter Henry in the seam on a quick throw and throw it high and behind him. Now, could Hunter Henry catch that football? Sure, he could have caught that ball, but it would have been easier to catch the football if the quarterback made a better throw. I mean, you can't miss Kayshon Boutte like Drake May missed in this game. You can't miss Austin Hooper wide open on a blown coverage. You can't miss Pop Douglas, who got open and you missed him. There were some throws that were there that Drake May has to make in the biggest game of his career, and he didn't. He was not sharp enough. It goes back to the offensive line. It sped him up early, and as soon as that happened, he was just not sharp enough. He had a couple of highs. The back-to-back beautiful throws on the touchdown, on that first touchdown drive, those two throws were a thing of beauty. Those are the elite plays that we've seen Drake May make within this offense. But too little, too late. And he was way too erratic. He was not seeing the rush as good enough as you need to see the rush. And so it was just kind of a combination of a number of things. Your offensive line was crumbling in front of you. Your quarterback, I think, was speeding himself up, and he wasn't seeing the field great at all times because of it. When he had a little bit of time, he had an opportunity to make a throw. His inaccuracy bit him in the butt. And so, you just can't play that way. You really cannot play that way. Not against this defense. When you feel like you're constantly second and long, third and long, that is a death knell. We talked about it. You have to stay on schedule. You have to have some positive plays on early downs. The interception downfield, that's a force. That's a forced throw. He threw it into triple, maybe even quadruple coverage down the field earlier on that drive to Matt Collins. He got away with it. Then he forces another throw downfield, trying to do too much too soon, trying to get all the points back up on the board. And you just can't make that throw in the Super Bowl. You just can't have it. I was also surprised that Drake May, his legs were not as big of a factor. They were later in the game. Seattle gave up a couple of scrambles, but May's legs were not a huge factor in this game. I thought Seattle did a pretty good job of kind of, muddying the pocket, so to speak. There were really no designed runs. That surprised me, especially on short yardage. I thought for sure you'd see a couple of designed runs from May. We didn't see any of that, and he wasn't sharp. Another thing that I did not understand about the offense tonight was Ramondre Stevenson. Why was Ramondre Stevenson not a bigger part of this game plan? Stevenson had 7 carries going into the fourth quarter. I don't understand that. I do not understand. He finished with 7 carries. How does Ramondre Stevenson, who has been your best offensive player over the past month and a half to 2 months, how in the world does he have 7 carries tonight? He was averaging over 3 yards a carry. It's not great, but you've got to give him the football more than you gave him the football. How in the world does your best offensive player get 7 carries? And I thought there was some lack of commitment to the run game. The Patriots would run the ball. They'd get 3 or 4 yards on first down. And then Josh McDaniels and Drake May fell in love with the idea of throwing the ball. It was a cycle that was endless for the Patriots offense in the first half. You run the ball on first down, you get 3 or 4 yards, and then on 2nd and 6 or 2nd and 7, you try to throw the football and you get a negative play. You get sacked, you get an incomplete pass, you get chaos, and then you're looking at 3rd and long. That was the cycle. And for the life of me, I just did not understand why Josh McDaniels didn't say, okay, we get 3 yards on the first down from Stevenson. Let's try to run the football again. Get 3 yards on first down, get 3 or 4 yards on second down. Now you're looking at 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3. That is much more manageable. It felt like the Patriots, they were chasing big plays all night long. Run the ball, you get 3 yards, run the ball again. If you get 3 yards, now you got a 3rd and 4 to deal with. Now you might be able to get a little bit creative. But the run the ball on first down for 3 yards and then try to pass, get a negative play, look at 3rd and forever, and force a 3 and out and have to punt the football. I felt like I was watching Groundhog's Day. It was the same thing over and over and over and over again. I thought there were too many straight dropbacks with the offensive line getting cooked up. And I understand the Patriots, they didn't move the pocket great in this postseason. It hasn't been a strength for them. But I'm looking at it, I'm saying, why don't you move the pocket a little bit more? I mean, these straight dropbacks when your offensive line is getting just trucked It's just not going to work. The long developing plays are not going to work consistently. Rough night. Brutal. And you can't blame the weather. The weather was fine. It was tough. You got wide receivers that can't get open quickly, consistently. You have, the non-committal OC on the run game for whatever reason. You got your offensive line getting bulldozed, and you got your quarterback thinking too much. Still a very young dude in a big game, biggest game of his life, and he is sped up and he's erratic. And you combine all of those factors, you miss a couple of opportunities, you get a handful of opportunities to make a play, and you miss on those opportunities through the first 2.5, 3 quarters, and this is what you get. You get an atrocious night from your offense.
The Celtics hosted the Knicks last night and let New York take a win after Boston led at halftime. After a rough shooting night from the C's, Locked On Celtics recaps the defeat.
Let's just get into the flow of this game. The New York Knicks won it pretty easily. The Celtics scoring 89 points is the biggest thing to really focus on here, because they shot 34 of 92 overall, 7 of 41 3-pointers. That's incredible. The Knicks doubled up the Celtics from the 3-point line. So that's 21 points right there. Just 21 points right there in the three-point disparity, and it's a 22-point win. It can just be that simple sometimes. It's not always, but for the Celtics, the missed shots, and not just missed shots, the ones that went halfway down and came back. Honestly, there was a point in the third quarter, and I tweeted this out. I thought if the Celtics were able to get half the points, and when the shot goes halfway down and then pops back out, if you're like, well, that went halfway in, so you get 1.5 points or a half point on a 2-pointer, that a 13-point game, that might have been tied at that point for the Celtics. They had so many go in and out. So step one here, not really their night. And it's 2 straight nights where they've started out cold. They came back on Friday night and were able to kind of overcome that, but they weren't able to do that against the Knicks. So they continued that whole second half. The Knicks are a little bit better than the Miami Heat. So you don't have the same opportunity to kind of bounce back the way they did on Friday. This one, they could just never really quite get the momentum. The third quarter, it was actually impressive for them to be down 5 when they were shooting so poorly. And it's not like they were defending great either, but they kept finding ways to keep it close. I thought the story of this game was going to be how the Celtics were able to keep it close and then maybe make a late run, a late push to kind of steal it. Because of how poorly they shot, because they kept giving up backdoor cuts. The defense wasn't really their best defensive effort overall. And I thought third quarter, they got it down to 5, and I was like, oh, man, they might have a chance here to kind of repeat the Miami game, work it down, find a way to get it into the fourth quarter kind of tied. And then it's just 12 minutes of who wants it more. Can you find a way to hit some shots? But then they go on a 3.5 minute just slump, cold shooting, and you go from 5 to down 15 all of a sudden, and New York just comes back and just takes control again. Fourth quarter, before New York ran away with it, you come out, Vooch gets a layup, Pritchard finally hits a shot. He hits a 3. And you're like, gee, it's only a 12-point game. You give up a couple of shots, you get it back down to 12, and you feel like it's still there. So at that point, a couple of minutes into the fourth quarter, the Celtics, despite playing poorly, are within striking distance. 12 points with 9-10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. That's plenty of time. catch a little bit of a heater. Somebody gets going. Derek White, who was shooting pretty well, one of these guys just bang, 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 and all of a sudden you're in a back and forth game. Very easy. But then turnover, foul a three-point shooter, and the momentum goes away again. And so that was the story of this game. The Celtics, without consistent shooting, as Joe Mazzulla said after the game, that puts a lot of pressure on the defense because now you feel like you got to come down and get a stop. Every mistake is magnified. Every miss gets magnified. Then you have a stretch where the officiating kind of changes, where they went from calling everything to calling nothing. And it was both sides. This is not a complaint about the officiating. It was just the flow of the officiating was at one point they were calling a bunch of fouls. Then they started calling nothing. Both teams were like super frustrated. But the Celtics, I think they let that frustration kind of carry over to the other end, and they just started making too many mistakes. The missed shots and all of this, it got to be a little bit too much for them. And so it ends up in a loss. I'm not too worried about the loss necessarily. It sucks that it came to the Knicks because the Celtics and Knicks are jockeying for position. And as of right now, they are tied in the they're tied for second at 34-19. But the Knicks, winning, we're talking about tiebreakers now. If it comes to that, the Celtics are going to be at a disadvantage. But they're right there. And so you this is a game that you would have hoped to have won. No Sam Hauser on a night where the Celtics didn't shoot well at all. You might say, well, Sam Hauser could have easily gotten swept up in this, and he didn't shoot well against Miami, so there's no guarantee. He can be streaky, obviously, but it would have been great to have at least one of their shooters, at least somebody. That's one more chance for somebody to get going, and it didn't. And so that's that. So they lost.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care most about, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better place to follow the action than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. North Carolina hosted rival Duke Saturday night, and as it often does when these two teams meet, the game went down to the last seconds. Seth Trimble hit a game winner to give UNC the win, and Isaac Shade has the recap on Locked On Tar Heels.
North Carolina beats Duke on Saturday night, 71-68. Massive. By the way, you should go, ESPN does those like win probability charts. It's one of the hilarious ones. Go check it out if you haven't seen it. This is Carolina's best start to a season since the 18-19 season. That's the Kobe White team. And really cool. If you didn't realize, Saturday was the 11th anniversary of Coach Steen Smith's passing. I mean, come on. You've got that anniversary. You got Roy Williams up there getting in his defensive stance. Nobody knows what's going on in Miss Wanda's head in that moment. Net rankings, when they came out on Sunday, interestingly, Carolina only jumped 3 spots after the win, but up to 24th. They are now 5-4 in quad 1 victories, 2-0 in quad 2, 7-0 in quad 3, and 5-0 in quad 4. And so that's really nice. You'd love for it to be a few fewer quad 1 losses, but hey, we'll take it. So here's where we're headed on the show today. This is a season-changing victory. How did it happen? How did Carolina flip the script from being down double digits on multiple occasions in the first half? We'll look at some court storm probs. We'll talk about the anatomy of a game winner and the rest of the Four Corners recap. Plus, we'll do the shady stat of the game. And I've got a nugget for you. I'm a sucker for research. Carolina has done something this season that they've done only one other time in the entire history of Carolina basketball. Ooh, get ready for that one. Let's dive right in. You all, this truly is a season-changing victory on multiple levels, right? Like, obviously, any season where you beat Duke at least once, it's a great season. So, yes, I mean it in that way. But bigger picture for this season, I mean that this win changes and raises the ceiling of what's possible. Because you take this win, you combine it with the win at Virginia, and those two wins help at some level cancel out the 2 California losses and the SMU loss as well. It doesn't negate them. And thankfully, right now, those are all quad 1 losses as well. Stanford one kind of teeters. I think it dropped to quad 2 for a couple days. So it doesn't fully negate them, but it helps make them more palatable. And frankly, think about it this way. What if I said, hey, you could win both of those California games, but you're going to lose at Virginia and you're going to lose at home to Duke? I would rather have these. I would rather have the Virginia win and the Duke win. Hands down, no questions asked about it. And then look, the truth of the matter, had Carolina won all 4 of those, we'd be having even different conversations. The Tar Heels would be in line for a 2 seed right now and would have 1 seed upside. That's where things would be, but it's not there. So this victory changes Carolina's ceiling in terms of results, of what Carolina's outcome could possibly be. It changes their ceiling in terms of seeding, both for the ACC tournament and NCAA tournament, right? Like, you lose this game, you lose even more touch with Duke and Clemson and Virginia and NC State and everybody right there at the top of the heap. But thanks to the win, Carolina is able to keep touch and bring Duke back closer to everyone. I mean, now Duke and Clemson are tied for the conference lead. And oh, by the way, they play each other in Cameron this coming Saturday. And then when you think about NCAA tournament seeding, if Carolina came into Saturday as a 5 seed, this puts them on the 4 seed line. It does. I'm very curious. A lot of people will start putting out bracketology Monday and Tuesday each week after the weekend's over. So I'm curious to see where a lot of things are done. And then the other thing, it's like every time you put another result like this on your resume, beating Kansas, which looks better by the day, by beating Kentucky at Kentucky. Look, the Wildcats are a half game out of the SEC lead right now. They're playing so much better. They've won like 8 out of 9. That win at Rupp ages like a fine wine right now. All of that, the win at Virginia, each one of those is a data point that helps your profile. And then you just keep hoping you do things that don't now hurt your profile. And so that's what you're trying to do. And so I'm speculating about NCAA tournament. We had like a couple people in the YouTube live postcast chat on Saturday asked about the NCAA tournament. Like Paul H said, what does this win mean for our NCAA tournament seed? Well, it's not just me. Like Joe Lunardi on Saturday night on his social media breakdown, he said, quote, the Tar Heels have ridden a 5-game winning streak, and Saturday's amazing win over Duke leads them to a protected 4 seed, end quote. So Lunardi has Carolina as a 4 seed now, but the key is you got to keep following up. Obviously, tomorrow's show, we'll get ready for the Miami game that's Tuesday. That's a dangerous game. I'll explain why, but you got to handle success well and keep winning. What I loved about this game is that Carolina did to Duke what several teams have done to Carolina this season, right? Like in Virginia, same kind of thing in that game. The Tar Heels were down and came back in the second half to make it interesting. Or in Stanford's case, Stanford came back and beat Carolina. Well, Carolina just did that to Duke. Fought tooth and nail to get back and win. Great resolve, great grit, great tenacity to not give up when it didn't work out exactly. And the truth is, Duke, man, had an answer for everything Carolina kept pushing. Duke kept responding. I mean, just knockout blow after knockout blow, trading them back and forth. And with the way that was going, I was like, dang, man, I just think that's going to mean that Carolina is not going to be able to get over the hump, right? It was crazy. 0.4 of a second, they ended up leading this game. So crazy. But that is all due to Carolina is battle tested. That is a strength of this team. They've had to come from behind. Like, think about the Kentucky game, another one where Derek Dixon made multiple plays down the stretch, just like in this one. It's great stuff. So how did it happen? Well, the second half made all the difference in the world. I'll say three things. Number one, Carolina went from being too soft in the first half to being not tough enough in the first half to being the aggressor in the second half. An example is Derek Dixon, right? Like that layup where he went straight into Cam Boozer and got the layup. I understand why a lot of people would call for a charge on that. It was a no call. I mean, I thought there was enough contact. You got to call something. If you look at it, yes, he had been waiting there for a long time, but watch his lateral movement. He is shifting left into it. Bang, bang play for certain. And if I was Duke, I'd be upset about it. I get that. But Carolina goes from not being tough enough to being the aggressor. Number two, Carolina goes from allowing Duke to basically make everything in the first half to holding them down in the second half. Much better defense. Carolina allowed 41 points in the first half, just 27 in the second half. Carolina allowed Duke to shoot 53% in the first half, 37.5% in the second half. From two, Duke shot 54.5% in the first half. Carolina lowered that down to 42.9 in the second half. We'll take that. And three-pointers. This one, Carolina almost cut in half. Duke shot 50% in the first half, 27.3% in the second half. That defense found a way to get it done, and that was critical. And then the third thing that Carolina did differently in the second half is nobody in the first half outside of Caleb Wilson and a little bit of Seth Trimble mixed in did much. To then in the second half, multiple players stepping up and scoring. Example, Caleb scored 17 of Carolina's 29 points in the first half, just 6 of their 41 points in the second half because other guys were stepping up. I already mentioned Derek Dixon's name. Think about everything he did down the stretch of this game. The multiple threes, the layup through Boozer we just talked about, the assist. Oh my goodness, the assist, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. Henry Vasar goes from not scoring in the first half to really, really turning it on in the second half, pouring it on and ultimately winding up scoring 13 points and having a double-double, the 13th on the season, which leads the ACC. So Vasar, really, he was more aggressive. He was more assertive. He went and had his way. I think a lot of that is due to Patrick Gungba being out, but hey, we'll take it. And then the other thing is, yes, Seth was good in the first half. He scored Carolina's first 5 points, I believe. But man, he kept pressing the second half, got 10 total points, including that game-winning 3. Great stuff. And that all of those kind of things are what changed it. But it was all in the second half. Different mentality. And then just briefly before we move on, the end of the game, the court storms. Obviously, I'm guessing you've probably heard John Shire's press conference where he talked about staffers getting punched and things like that. I've seen literally no evidence of it. Nobody's put out videos, and there were how many thousands of cameras on that moment, right? How have we not seen anything other than Isaiah Evans knocking a Carolina fan's phone out of his hand? Carolina's fined for the court storm. Fine, whatever. I can live with that. You don't want any bad things to happen, but like the moment was odd. You know what I mean? And so there was that. And look, here's this too. I've seen a lot of Duke people complaining that Carolina should have been assessed a technical for the court storm before the game was over. Let me say two things about that. Number one, the clock went to 0, the buzzer sounds, so the game, as far as everyone knew, was over. And so it's not then, in fact, an early court storm because according to the clock, the game is over, right? So you can't adjudicate a technical foul for that. However, let's just play devil's advocate. Let's say the referees did assess a technical foul. Let's play that out, shall we? Join me. Duke is down by 3 points, 71-68. If they make both free throws, which is no guarantee because they're barely a better shooting team than Carolina at the free throw line, even if they make both of those free throws, they're still down 1 point with 0.4 of a second left to go, and they get the ball at the point of interruption, which is like inbounding a ball after the other team scores. So now they're going to have to throw it all the way to the other side of the court. And so the game ultimately, Like, that's how it played out as they tried to get it in with 0.4 of a second, couldn't do anything. But let's say in this hypothetical, they're able to complete a pass. Since there's more than 0.3 of a second, 0.4, you can technically catch and shoot. But there's no time for a dribble, no time for a move, no time to spin around and face the basket because you got to catch it going back. There's no time for the pacer play, the Valpo play that Bryce Drew beat Ole Miss with back in 92 or whenever that was. There's no time for anything. Essentially, a foul is the only thing that would have saved Duke. But guess what? Carolina only had committed one foul. So even if Carolina fouled, it would have had to have been a shooting foul for them to get free throws and maybe win the game that way. A whole horde of things. So assess the technical all you want. You're still not going to win. How do you miss that you're down 3 points? What are we talking about? It doesn't matter. Okay, you know what? I wish in the handshake lines, which I know didn't really happen much, I wish Seth Trimble was just signing and handing out free Ben and Jerry scoops to all the Duke players and staff, just salt in the wound, just rubbing it in, right? Like, do you want an autograph from the guy that just won the game? You do? Here you go. Come get some free ice cream, courtesy of me at my shop, right? Like, incredible.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care most about, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better place to follow the action than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. In the Big Ten, a top 10 matchup pitted Michigan State against Illinois Saturday night, and the Spartans came out on top after an overtime thriller of a finish. Matt Sheehan with Locked On Spartans checks in to recap the win.
I hope you're all still with us after that heart-stopping finish there for Michigan State, whether it was regulation, whether it was overtime. DK, if that last three-pointer went in, I don't know if I'd be here to record a fun episode of Locked On Spartans. That would have snatched the soul clean out of my body, but we don't got to talk about that because it didn't go in. DK, help me set the stage for this show, because what is the number one storyline out of that game? Because I got three. It's Jeremy Fears. He isn't just some big bad bully that likes to trip people. No, he's a really damn good point guard. 26 points, 15 assists, outstanding game. Jordan Scott, the human straitjacket, he was just supposed to merely contain Keaton Wagler. He shut Wagler down. He only got his points from the free throw line or that three when it was already too late in the game for it to matter for Illinois. Or is it storyline number three, the broad one, DK? Look, one of my takeaways from the game, that Illinois team, I think, is in the upper echelon of college basketball. I think they are one of a handful of teams that could win it. And I think today showed that, yes, even after a slight little slump of 2 games, this Michigan State team can still compete with the best. Of those three, what is the top takeaway from this game, DK?
Yeah, I think given the week that Jeremy has had, you probably got to start there. Tough showing on the Minnesota game, just kind of have to be, getting your head on right. And there's a lot of outside noise. And to have the performance that he did today, we saw what Wagler did just, a week or so ago at Purdue, just basically going unconscious. And to have your superstar, because I think Jeremy Fears is entering that. Forget all the extracurriculars and all the noise and all the rest of that stuff. Yeah. He's been playing like an All-American for the last, 8-9 games now. I'd have to go back and look when it started. But the numbers that he's putting up and the production that he's giving you, and today he did it when it mattered the most. Like a little bit of a slower start offensively. Second half, he was great. Overtime, he basically took over. The screen navigation stuff was special tonight from him. And to have as many assists as he did, it's like 26 and 15. I saw CBB Analytics posted this, but the first major conference player to post 25 and 15 in a game since Oklahoma's Trae Young in December of 2017. That is an insane stat. We're talking about Jeremy Fears in the same vein as Trae Young. Like, what a special performance from him. And I think what you said is true 100% about, Michigan State needing to get over the hump to beat a team that's kind of has the ability to maybe go out and make a Final Four and potentially even win it all. The firepower has been there for them. And I just thought that was like a high level game. It was a lot of shot making back and forth, so many different lead changes. That's a game that if you saw that in March and it was, an Elite Eight game, you'd be like, that's a good game. Excuse my language. Sorry, Lock on Spartans, but that was just a good game. I'm glad, obviously, it ended in a dub for us because it would have been devastating to come on here and talk about like how great of a game it was, and then you don't end up with it. But tonight, they just, both sides of the ball was working. The defense gave them chances, and the offense kind of found their rhythm late with contributions from a bunch of different guys to be able to get over the hump.
And this defense proved again that this is amongst the best in the country for the Michigan State side, of course. Yes, the Minnesota game was definitely a step back in that regard, but they got their heads straight this time around. Or maybe, DK, maybe Luka Garza, who had a clip earlier on another podcast, said that Michigan State has different rims, and the team that is the visitors for Michigan State shoots on that rim in the second half, and that's why they're so low. Hey, you know what? Garza might be right here. 42% in the first half for Illinois, 32% in the second half. So it's either the rims or it's that it's a Hall of Fame coach captaining a team that plays great defense, and they made the adjustments on top of an already good game plan going into this one, and they just shut the valves off in the second half. What do you think is more accurate? Do you think rims have been a little jockeyed here, DK, or do you think Michigan State's just elite defensively? It's hard for me to say. I can't tell.
Yeah, I think that the defense has been elite for most of the season.
Okay.
It was nice that they kind of leaned back into it tonight. I thought from kind of the get-go they had it. And the Visage brothers hit a couple threes. You get a three, and you're just thinking to yourself, oh my God, is it going to be one of these nights where some of these guys just start knocking down some shots? Jake Davis hit some timely ones too. A lot of weapons on that Illinois team, and obviously they're missing Kylan Boswell, but I think that this team kind of found, to a certain degree, some of their offensive flow, running a lot of things through Wagler. And tonight, the job that Jordan Scott did on him, the most human he's looked basically in 2 months. I think that was just a really, really nice job guarding him. I thought they did well managing the ball screens and kind of containing him at that spot and not letting him get loose. He really just was not that much of an impact out there. I thought Merkovich was really the one that they kind of had to shoulder the yoke on, and he, almost basically single-handedly beat Michigan State down the stretch with some of the drives and finishes he had. It was some of the tough takes, just like on the move. Like, how does he get that left hand to go kind of falling away? It was, just a really impressive basketball back and forth, on the edge of the seat the whole time. And I think that even if you were a casual fan of the game, not a fan of either of the two, I think that it's easily in the top 5-10 games that have been played this season. It was really good.
That's happened a lot in the last few years where, like, a day after Michigan State plays, I say to myself, I really wish I didn't care. I really wish it didn't feel like I was going to have a stroke during the entire game, because that's probably a fun game to actually just watch as a neutral bystander and have no stake in the game. That was cinema tonight, DK. What I want to do next is I want to do a compliment sandwich. You know what I mean by that? I'm going to start complimenting Michigan State, and in a way that's going to turn into an Illinois compliment, and then it's going to end with another Michigan State compliment. But I was wildly impressed with how Michigan State pretty much dictated how this game was going to go. I mean, as far as pace and tempo, fast break points 22-0. Other teams have been so good at limiting what Michigan State has done in the fast break as of late. Michigan State, they were able to get it done. Okay, I think it could have even been better than 22-0, but that's the final score in that tabulation, so we'll do it. The rebounding, they out-rebounded Illinois 48-38. That's including out-rebounding them 7-2 in overtime. Michigan State was clean with the ball in the second half. No turnovers in the second half. They were great from the free throw line, 20 of 23. But DK, this is where the Illinois compliment comes in. That much went well for Michigan State, and yet Illinois was still in the game with Wagler having a 0 performance. That's why I think that they are still, even with the loss, up in that upper tier group of teams that can win this whole national title, like I've already said. But the Michigan State compliment to end on is you still found a way to win against a team like that. I can't get enough of it. Look, is it the greatest win that we've ever seen in our entire lives? No, but sure seems like the win of the season so far, DK. Does it not? Or is there another
It's the win of the season. I don't think there's any question. I mean, obviously, I think the UNC game, they have a big one, against Duke tonight, and win that rivalry matchup for them, which, makes that Michigan State kind of bludgeoning that they did look a little bit better. But I think that this is the one that they needed the most in this type of spot on a 2-game losing streak. You needed to, kind of add that notch to your belt for a top 5, top 10 type win. And they were able to do that tonight. So this one to me has to be for sure. And if I can slide a little compliment to Illinois, just from a coaching perspective, Brad hit the podium, basically said, the refs checked it. Nothing happened, it's always going to be kind of a judgment call and moved on from it. Like, is it that hard? It's like a classy way to go about doing it. And
wait, hold on.
I want to give him credit for that, because the Twitter minions are out there, and it doesn't matter. No matter what happens now, anytime that Jeremy gets tangled up with somebody, it's going to be looked at, and that's just the way he's placed himself in that box, and there's nothing he can do about it. But at the same time, it was nice to see Brad just kind of brush it off, move it on, not make it a continued storyline. Like, it's pretty easy to do.
I'm looking around for my Big Ten coaching handbook here, because I thought it said that you have to wait 3 days and then just blanket statement, just say that no, he was actually dirty for all 40 minutes. That's not what he did. That's interesting. Okay, I'll have to find my copy of the Big Ten coaching handbook and circle back on that. But no, man, good on Brad Underwood. Yeah, it was. I don't hate the challenges. I mean, let's be honest here. It's gamesmanship, right, DK? Like, the storylines are building up. Sure, that was a kind of a 50-50 play. Go to the booth, put it in the refs' hands. Who cares? But yeah, I'm actually amazed that you could just go to the podium after and say, nope, the refs looked at it. Wasn't dirty. Well, let's all move on in life. Huh.
The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. That's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care most about, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. It's the building drama of curling matches, races decided by inches or fractions of a second. Both popular and niche events become must-watch when you're fully locked into the competition. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better place to follow the action than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game.
Welcome back to the Big 6 and 60. With the Super Bowl out of the way, the Raiders confirmed that they'll hire Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak as their next head coach, something that was just a formality of an announcement. We already knew he would be the coach. With a new coach and a new quarterback potentially coming in, your boy Q looks at the state of the team on Locked On Raiders.
Now that it's all said and done, Super Bowl 60 is a wrap. 29-13, the Seahawks get the win. Defense dominated first and foremost, right? That defense, 29-13, and it really wasn't even that close, right? That defense was incredible for the majority of the game. It was really a snooze fest where it was nothing but field goals and sacking the quarterback when it comes to Drake May getting hit and sacked early and often, where he takes 7 sacks on Sunday. So it was one of those performances by that Seahawks defense that made you think of the Legion of Boom and thought, man, this is incredible. This is just like them, right? The dark side. It's even better than some of those guys from the Legion of Boom as far as the guys up front that were able to get to the quarterback. So that was really what led the way for Seattle to get the victory. But Kenneth Walker, how about him? Super Bowl MVP, 27 carries, 135 yards, 2 catches, 26 yards, only the 8th running back all time to win the Super Bowl MVP. This stood out to me in a major way because we know that Clint Kubiak is going to be the Raiders' next head football coach. Matter of fact, we'll hear him say that coming up in a hot second. But all I could think about watching that game, every time I saw Kenneth Walker carry the rock, all 27 times I saw him carry it, and the 2 times I saw him catch it, even the one run that he took to the house that got called back because of a holding, and it was a legit holding penalty. All I could think of is Ashton Genty and how much he's going to benefit from Clint Kubiak, right? This zone blocking scheme that Clint Kubiak and company are going to bring to the Raiders once he becomes officially the Raiders head coach and gets introduced and they put the staff together. As long as the Raiders have the right offensive lineman, and again, this is a big if because the Raiders have tried to run the zone blocking scheme many times and it has not come to fruition. It has not worked out very well. Clint Kubiak has to understand he needs the guys to be able to go out there and execute that zone blocking scheme. But every time I saw Kenneth Walker run the ball, I thought that could be Ashton Genty. Kenneth Walker is a really good running back. I don't want to take anything from him. I think Ashton Genty's better, right? And given the opportunity and the patience that Kenneth Walker has, Ashton Genty has that patience as well, right? There's a reason why he went for over 2,000 yards at Boise State. He showed that same type of patience and finding the hole and being able to hit it and then go. That's what it takes in the zone blocking scheme. Not to mention, throughout the course of the year, even when the Seahawks weren't having great games on the ground, they still stuck to it, right? And look, they averaged 5 yards a carry. He averaged 5 yards a carry on Sunday, which is great. He had a couple big runs. But there was times throughout the season where they didn't have great games as far as, averaging per carry, but they stuck to it. So the games that we always came away scratching our head thinking, what in the world? How come Ashton Genty only had 9 carries? How come he only had 7 carries? How come he only had 11 carries? Like, you got to give the guy the rock. And I know for a fact that he wants the rock. We've talked about it in the locker room many times, right? Every time he had a game where he had 24 carries or 25 carries, there's always be a reporter that says, that's your career high in carries. How are you feeling? And I always looked at him. He looked at me and he feels fine, right? I mean, we talk about it. He feels fine. He's a volume back. He's a guy that wants to carry the rock a lot. Now, with that being said, Seattle also had a really good 1-2 punch with Charbonnet as well with Walker, and obviously he tore his ACL, so he wasn't able to play. It would be great to see the Raiders pick up another running back that they feel comfortable with, sharing the load with Genty, obviously him being the guy that carries the ball the most. But really excited about what Ashton Genty, the action he's going to get. Obviously, again, the offensive line has to be put in place. You have to have the right guys to be able to execute that zone blocking scheme. But if they do, and I do believe whatever the contract ends up being for Clint Kubiak, he's going to have the time to get this thing turned around, built in the right way, and have the right guys. Don't try to force guys that don't really necessarily run a certain scheme. Don't force them to try to do it, right? Just get the guys that you feel like fit that mold. So I think Colton Miller is one of those guys. I think there's a place on the offensive line for Jackson Powers-Johnson wherever they want to put him. Either center or guard, just don't play around with them. Don't toy around with them. Just put them where they want them to put them, all right, and stick them there. I think that you could put DJ Glaze at one of the guard spots and probably be good, but you're going to have questions, right? You're going to have questions on, who's going to be the center, who's going to be the right tackle, who's going to be the other guard position. That's up to the Raiders to figure that out. And I trust that they, are the smart guys and they can figure it out. But I'm telling you, as I watched that Seahawks offense operate, it wasn't the fantastic play of Sam Darnold, and that wasn't bad. He only got sacked one time. He made some really good decisions. He's now a Super Bowl champion, which is incredible because he looked like a bust at one point. But he stuck with it and had a coach that believed in him. A couple coaching staffs that believed in him. Now he's a Super Bowl champ. But and the defense was incredible. But really, every time Kenneth Walker touched the ball, all I could see is number 2. All I could see is Ashton Genty. I mentioned Clint Kubiak and that he basically confirmed, or he did confirm, that he's going to be the Raiders' next head football coach. And that's when he talked to NFL Network Stacey Dales, and she asked him about the job.
What does the future look like as a head coach in this league for you? Because it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's up to God, and we're gonna enjoy tonight. Yeah.
So no answers on the network.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah. Well, you guys know I'm going to Las Vegas, so I'm fired up about it. But tonight, one more for one more night. Hell yeah, I'm going. Of course I'm going. Yeah.
Just confirmed it right here.
So there you go. Hell yeah, I'm going. Right. So if you needed any more confirmation, so anyone that was concerned about Clint Kubiak, is he or is he not going to be the head football coach? Is there something that could happen that can trip up this process? No, he confirmed it. He's going to be the Raiders' next head football coach. I know for a fact the press conference is supposed to be on Tuesday. We're all supposed to be there doing our radio shows. They're going to kind of run him through a car wash style like ESPN used to do all the time. When they had a guest there at Bristol at the campus, and they'd run them to radio, then they'd run them to TV, then they'd run them to digital, then they'd run them, it's just that they used to call that the car wash. Well, that's what the Raiders are going to attempt to do on Tuesday at the facility. So unless something gets tripped up, and things can, right? I mean, the logistics could happen. Something could get tripped up, and maybe it gets pushed to Wednesday. But the way I've been told, it's supposed to take place on Tuesday at the Raiders facility, the press conference for one Clint Kubiak. I'm sure it's going to get announced today that he's the head football coach, but like I said, the official press conference won't be until Tuesday. So, big ups to the Seahawks, big ups to Clint Kubiak, big ups to the Raiders because they're going to get their guy. They have a whole lot of money when it comes to salary cap space. They got 10 draft picks, and they've got Fernando Mendoza most likely coming in as a pick number 1 their new franchise quarterback. Whether he starts or he doesn't start, he's going to be the guy as far as I'm concerned. He was on Radio Row on Friday. I tried to catch up with him, but I kept getting run off. It's funny. There was a time when Will Compton and Taylor Lewan busting with the boys, they saw him. It was behind the ESPN, the big background and the big setup, the stage that ESPN had on at the Moscone Center on Radio Row, and he was walking behind it. So I was behind him in hot pursuit, and then he started talking to Will Compton and Taylor Lewan. And if you actually see the video on the Bussin' with Boys social media, you can see some dude walking in the background. Yeah, that's me. That was me trying to catch up to him. Then he walked into the bathroom, and that felt kind of weird. I was like, oh, man, I can't follow him into the bathroom. So then I literally waited outside the bathroom, and his handler was just not letting me have it, not letting me get a couple minutes with him, which is fine. Not a big deal. He didn't have to. I didn't have any kind of interview lined up with him, but I was doing everything I could to try to get a couple words from him. But don't worry, we'll get him in Indianapolis at the scouting combine, and that's coming up in a couple short weeks. So we'll be looking forward to that, and of course we'll hear from Fernando Mendoza then.
That's all for today's Big 6 in 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, or on campus going up every weekend just like we do here. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NBA, the Big 3 in 30 NFL, or the Big 3 in 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.